It all started in the year 2000 and something when giant portals just kind of popped up all over the planet. These gates connected to bizarre labyrinths known as catacombs. Inside these places lived all sorts of monsters which got nicknamed knee enemies. The problem was, if one of these catacombs was left alone for too long, something bad would happen. The creatures would start to leak into our world and invade everything. Faced with this situation, humanity was completely defenseless, unable to do a thing to protect itself. However, it was discovered that if certain talented people spent some time inside a catacomb, they changed. From that point on, these individuals would awaken special abilities that were called skills. And with these new powers, humanity finally had a chance to fight back against the enemies. The skill wielders who explored and conquered the catacombs became the front line, and for their heroic deeds, the people started calling them dungeon divers. So, in the present day, a teacher is explaining in a classroom that being a diver is the most respected profession in the world. Right after that, a sigh of boredom is heard from one of the students in the back of the room. This guy is our main character, Sota Sasaki, who doesn't seem the least bit interested in the lecture. He thinks about his parents, who were also players and dungeon divers, but his father was lost in battle, and his mother met an uncertain fate. His greatest wish was to become a splendid dungeon diver, just like his parents, but something always held him back. As he was lost in thought, a strange figure appeared at the classroom window. Suddenly, the shadow morphed into an ugly creature with a sinister grin. Because of this, our MC lets out a scream of terror that echoes through the entire classroom. The teacher and the other students turn to him, annoyed, and one of them complains that Sota is a really loud guy. Lying on the floor, the boy trembles in fear while a classmate asks why he just screamed out of nowhere. Two girls whisper to each other about how weird and creepy Sota is. He remembers that this isn't new, it's been happening for a long time. The young man reveals that he has always been able to see things other people can't. This ability is called spiritual vision, the power to see spirits. Sota recalls when his father was still alive and tried to awaken his skill in a catacomb. However, the boy was too terrified of the spirits to focus on the task. He held out for several hours, but no skill awakened, so he couldn't become like his father, the strongest flame master. Back in the classroom, a classmate extends a hand and asks if Sota is okay. Our protagonist accepts the help and says thanks. However, upon seeing who had helped him, our MC is shocked and stammers his name, Takudo. Turns out, this guy is named Takudo Sega, and he's a childhood friend of Sota's. Unlike our protagonist, Takudo has already awakened a skill and is a dungeon diver. He then whispers in our MC's ear for them to meet at the usual spot after class. The expression on Sota's face shows he's not the least bit happy about this unexpected invitation. As they get settled, the girls in the class comment to each other about how kind and good-hearted Sega is. Sota overhears the conversation and is indignant, wondering where they got such a crazy idea. The scene cuts sharply to after school, with our protagonist being thrown forcefully to the ground. Lying on the grass, he hears a familiar voice complaining that he took too long to get there. Before him are Takudo and two other guys who start mocking Sota, calling him a phony medium. Filled with rage, our MC thinks they'd better stop messing with him. The bully then grabs Sota by the collar, demanding he hand over his money. With no other choice, the boy hands over a 5,000 yen bill and some coins, but Takudo thinks it's not nearly enough. Sota then explains that he can't give any more because he needs the money to pay for his mom's hospital bills, and in response to that justification, our protagonist gets decked, and Takudo, without a shred of remorse, tells our MC to stop wasting money on an unconscious old woman. He says he feels sorry for Sota, since his mom fell into a coma inside a catacomb, and to make matters worse, he adds that the boy's father went crazy and perished like a piece of trash. With that, Takudo claims Sota's parents were useless, and that the young man is also an incompetent who makes up lies about seeing spirits to hide his weakness. He then asks why Sota's family was even born, leaving the boy completely devastated by his words. Seeing Sota's look, he asks, "What's with that look?" However, our protagonist couldn't hide his hateful glare, but Takudo isn't intimidated and tells Sota to know his place, calling him incompetent trash. He then lands a solid punch right in Sota's face, calling him an arrogant piece of junk. After taking that punch, our protagonist is completely wrecked. He thinks that it's true his father changed after his mother collapsed, becoming obsessed with catacombs and perishing before they could ever talk. Even all beaten up, Sota refuses to believe that was all there was to it, thinking there must have been a reason for his father's actions. One of Takudo's goons scoff, saying Sota is too weak and can't take a hit. At that, the blonde grabs our protagonist by his clothes and says he knows just what to do with him. He says he's gonna train Sota in place of his useless parents. Next, Takudo leads the group into the middle of a forest, and a glowing green gate appears before them. Our protagonist is shocked, his bruised face barely able to believe what he's seeing. Terrified, he stammers and asks if that's a real gate in front of them. The blonde confirms he found the place the day before, and says they're going to give Sota some training. While one of his friends thinks the idea is hilarious, one of the other boys with a bit of common sense asks this if this isn't too dangerous for them. Takuto gets annoyed by the question and glares at the guy, who quickly apologizes, saying he was just thinking about reporting the gate. Faced with the situation, the bully tells them not to be afraid of a simple green gate, since they've even cleared purple gates before. Soda is visibly terrified by the situation and starts shaking with fear, not knowing what to do. Seeing our protagonist's hesitation, Takuto loses his patience and sends a skill flying in Soda's direction. It ends up grazing him, leaving our protagonist paralyzed with fear. With a threatening look, Takuto tells him to stop whimpering and warns him that next time, his hand might slip, and with his bow in hand, he threatens to attack the hospital where Soda's mother is staying. Our protagonist grinds his teeth in pure rage but can't do anything to defend himself. Head down and completely defeated, Soda says he gets the message, and so, with no other choice, he agrees to go inside the gate, and the group prepares to enter the dungeon. As soon as they enter the dungeon, the group walks through a dark cave and is quickly surrounded by strange, floating purple orbs. These orbs look like spirits with sad, frightening faces, wandering through the gloomy environment. Our protagonist realizes that, just as he imagined, his classmates can't see the creatures, but even knowing he's the only one who can see them, fear still grips his body. Out of nowhere, a small fire creature appears, flying through the darkness of the cave, and the little flame speeds towards our protagonist. Seeing it coming right for him, he gets scared and shrinks back in fear. Takuto kicks the creature and yells at the boy to stop being such a wimp. He continues to mock Soda, sarcastically asking if there are any ghosts around and saying he's not worthy of being the son of the strongest flame master. He says he's sick of Soda's excuses and that there's no point to his life. He finishes by saying he knows the truth and that Soda's father was also the worst kind of person, because even with his wife sick, the protagonist's father spent all his time conquering catacombs and perished for nothing. He concludes by saying that Soda's father was a jerk who got carried away by the title of strongest and prioritized fame over his own family. He suggests that if Soda perishes there, maybe he can meet his idiot father, and with a look of disdain, he tells our protagonist to just drop dead right there. Tears of anger and humiliation stream down Soda's face as he thinks about how everyone is looking down on him. But despite everything, the small fire creature continues to float in front of the boy. Soda gets annoyed, as even the ghosts seem to be looking at him with pity, and he wonders if the little creature is making fun of him too. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes from a dark void asking, "Is it really mocking you?" Our protagonist is completely shocked to hear the voice coming from nowhere. Right after, the fire creature begins to grow and change shape, becoming even more intimidating. The mysterious voice then instructs him to strain his eyes and listen carefully. With that, Soda focuses his gaze and concentrates like never before. Takuto has no idea what's going on and asks where our protagonist is looking. Suddenly, the bully's face twists into an expression of shock. Blood starts to trickle from the blonde's mouth, and he has no idea what just happened. To his horror, a giant claw bursts through his chest, and he lets out a desperate scream of pain. The other two goons are frozen in fear, unable to believe what they just witnessed. It turns out a giant skeletal monster emerged from the shadows and impaled Takuto, lifting him into the air like a trophy. One of the panicking goons screams that the monster is a spider. He then identifies it as the queen spider, the area boss of a high-difficulty red gate. The creature is known for a bizarre habit. It takes the most appetizing prey to its nest and lays eggs inside it while devouring it. This is considered one of the worst ways to go, and what's left of the prey meets an equally cruel fate. The leftovers are given to the queen's babies, and at that moment, a swarm of small spiders emerges from the shadows. Faced with this gruesome scene, the two remaining goons are completely terrified. They let out a scream of terror and start running for their lives, abandoning our protagonist. Lying on the ground, Soda is left behind, completely defenseless. Soon, the small spiders surround him from all sides, and he finds himself with no escape route. Trembling with fear, he wonders if he's really going to perish in this horrible place. But then, the boy clenches his teeth and screams in his mind that he absolutely does not want to go out like this. At that instant, the mysterious voice echoes in his mind again, encouraging him not to give up and to strain his eyes. The voice continues, telling him to listen carefully and sharpen his senses to feel what's happening. It explains that, in his current state, he will understand, and with that, a bright light illuminates him, and our beloved system appears. The system congratulates him, and Soda can't believe what's happening. The system message informs him that a skill has awakened due to the catacomb's blessing, and a large blue screen appears in front of our protagonist. Next, the window shows the skill's name, which is Legacy Anomaly, and the detail reveals it comes from Wandering Souls. Soda's confused by the term Wandering Souls, and stares at the small small fire creature floating near him. Suddenly, the flame begins to glow with an absurd intensity, as if it's about to explode. The small creature starts to transform, and our protagonist quickly recognizes the man. His name was Houghton, and he was none other than his late father. Houghton's spirit then extends a hand to his son with a gentle smile on his face. In complete disbelief, our protagonist stammers the word, "Hi, Dad," and tries to reach for the outstretched hand. Their fingers are about to touch in the middle of that dark, monster-filled cave. However, one of the spiders doesn't like the scene one bit and prepares to attack and ruin the reunion. But Houghton's spirit positions himself in front of his son to protect him from the swarm of creatures. At that crucial moment, their hands finally meet in a touch filled with power and meaning. Right after, a gigantic explosion of fire erupts from the point where they touched. The wave of flames sweeps through everything, engulfing all the spiders at once. After the dust settles and the smoke clears, our protagonist stands alone amidst the destruction. Engulfed in his father's flames, our protagonist now faces the situation with a new determination. With that, the system screen explains that his legacy anomaly skill allows him to inherit skills from wandering souls. He looks at his flaming hand and realizes that this is the same power his father used. Tears of joy stream from his eyes as he finally has a skill and has become a dungeon diver. The small flame by his side, however, warns him that it's no time to get sentimental, as the danger isn't over. Right after, one of the surviving spiders charges towards them, ready to attack. Soda panics and starts running desperately, trying to escape the giant creature. He wonders what he should do, but the fire spirit scolds him, saying he already told him to keep his eyes open. The flame then insists that he concentrate and truly see the monster. With that, our protagonist focuses his gaze, and his eyes begin to glow with a fiery energy. His vision changes, and he can see the spider's life energy, as if it were a soul X-ray. He notices that the creature is preparing to spit something. The spider fires a web projectile at high speed, and the spirit yells at him to watch out. Soda is confused by what he just saw, and the spirit explains that he managed to see the creature's soul wave. The flame continues, saying that the source of power for everyone, whether players or enemies, originates from the soul. The small flame explains that Soda was able to predict the attack because he saw the power concentrating in the spider's mouth, and that this is an extra effect of his anomaly skill. As they talk, the monster doesn't waste any time and prepares to attack again. And with a leap, the creature lunges with everything it's got towards our protagonist. The fire spirit then challenges the spider, wanting to see how long it can last in the fight. The spider tries to attack with its claws, but Soda manages to block the blow with a barrier of flames. Seizing the opening, he retaliates with a fire kick straight to the creature's leg. Our protagonist is surprised by his own agility and doesn't understand how he managed to do that. But even without understanding, he stays in the rhythm and lands a flaming punch on another of the creature's legs. Confused, he looks at his own hands and wonders where this fighting ability came from. The small flame then reveals that since Soda is hosting his father's soul, he didn't just inherit the skills, but also all of his combat techniques. Our protagonist finally understands that he can now fight like his father, and his hand glows with a new energy. With that, Houghton's spirit manifests behind his son, and a powerful aura of fire envelopes them both. His father's ghost approaches and seems to whisper words of encouragement in the boy's ear. With a tear in his eye but a face full of determination, Soda says, "You're right." Together, father and son advance into battle, and our protagonist shouts, "Let's go, Dad," ready to end the fight. With that, he charges forward and lands a full force fire punch right in the spider's face. In the middle of the fight, our protagonist uses his anomalous vision and notices a point of energy glowing inside the monster. He manages to dodge another of the creature's attacks, leaving a trail of flames behind. And with his flaming eye, he continues to analyze the spider, looking for an opportunity to strike. His special vision reveals the creature's soul, and he realizes that all its energy is concentrated in its head. That point of energy begins to glow brighter and brighter, as if it's accumulating power. Faced with this, Soda wonders if that specific spot is the spider's weak point. Without a second thought, he leaps towards the monster, his fist ablaze, ready to deliver the finishing blow. And with incredible force, he lands a punch directly on the creature's abdomen, causing a huge impact. Our protagonist yells, "Take this," as he unleashes the attack with all his determination. His fiery fist smashes the spider's carapace and destroys the energy core he had seen. After the attack, Soda calmly walks away, his body still on fire, as the monster falls lifelessly to the ground. He passes by the defeated spider, but notices that one of the hatchlings managed to survive the initial explosion. However, the small creature doesn't stand a chance, and is quickly consumed by the flames surrounding the boy, and with all the enemies finally defeated, our protagonist looks back with a serious expression, his fists still aflame. With a final blow he uses Flame Prison and completely incinerates the remaining giant spider. After the battle, the flames around him die down, and our protagonist stares at the monster's remains with a serious look. Soon after, exhaustion hits, and he lets out a sigh of relief for having survived the confrontation. Our protagonist comments that he somehow managed, and the small flame says that for a first time, it wasn't bad at all. The spirit then reveals the secret of the anomaly ability, explaining that Soda needs to talk to his father's soul to hear his regrets, and only then can he fully inherit the skill. The boy asks how the flame knows all this, but it dodges the question and tells him to focus on what's right in front of him. Continues saying that until now, the boy was in a semi-awakened state and thus perceived souls incompletely, but now that his ability has truly awakened, he can even talk to the soul, and at that moment, Houghton's spirit materializes before him. With a gentle smile, his father's ghost greets him, saying it's been a while since they last saw each other. Our protagonist is speechless, barely able to believe what he's seeing, stammering only the word, "Dad." Houghton's expression changes to one of sadness and regret as he looks at his son. He then apologizes and places a comforting hand on Soda's shoulder. With that, all of our protagonist's anger and pain explode, and he yells, asking why his father didn't stay by his mother's side, and why he did something so reckless. Houghton then reveals the true reason for his actions, saying that all he wanted was to save Soda's mother. Our protagonist is completely shocked by the revelation and can't process the information. Houghton then begins to explain that Soda's mother lost consciousness because of the queen spider's venom, and that he needed the monster's fangs to create an antidote. Because of this, ever since she collapsed, every time he heard about a red gate, he would explore it recklessly, without thinking of the consequences. He remembers when he finally thought he had cornered the creature, only to fall into a trap at the last moment. The desperate look on his face back then showed just how dangerous and difficult his solo mission was. Our protagonist is left completely stunned, finally understanding everything his father went through alone. Houghton admits that he refused to listen to others and forced the missions because of a weakness in his heart. He tells Soda it's natural to feel angry or even curse him, but the boy shouts back that he is very angry at him. With tears in his eyes, the young man can't understand why his father blamed himself so much for everything, and so, he grabs Houghton's spirit and questions why he had to suffer alone, since they're a family. He continues, saying that maybe he couldn't have been much help, but he wished his father had, at least talked to him. Faced with his son's sincerity, Houghton is visibly moved and doesn't know what to say. From that moment on, our protagonist makes a promise and declares with all the conviction in the world that he will be the one to save his mother. And he doesn't stop there, stating that he will become a player and a diver who will surpass his own father. With tears of determination streaming down his face, he vows that he won't let anyone else perish, and that he'll prove to everyone that he can become the strongest diver that ever existed. Houghton's spirit smiles with immense pride and comments that his son is finally talking like a real man. Father and son embrace in a moment of pure emotion and reconciliation. Houghton then says that Soda is the son he's most proud of, and that he loves him very much. He continues, explaining that he needed to convey these feelings no matter what, and that now he has no more regrets. With his final words, he asks his son to become strong, stronger than anyone else. Houghton's spirit dissipates into particles of light and ascends to the heavens, leaving behind one last request for the boy to take care of his mother. With a sad smile and tears in his eyes, our protagonist thanks his father for everything. A new system window appears, informing him that he has eliminated the regrets of Kiichiro Sasaki, and that the condition was to convey his feelings to his son. He has now inherited the skill Radiant Flame, which allows him to freely manipulate flames. Soda stands in silence for a moment, just watching the last particles of his father's light disappear. Tears of sadness and gratitude continue to stream from his eyes as he finally accepts his new destiny. The small floating flame breaks the silence and comments that the promise to surpass his own father was a pretty bold declaration, admitting it underestimated him. Our protagonist then sincerely thanks the fire spirit for all the help it gave him, but the little flame doesn't like the formality and tells him to cut it out with the politeness, saying it hates that kind of thing. It continues, telling him to drop the honorifics because they're not strangers. Faced with this, Soda gets confused and asks who the little flame is and if they've met before. The floating flame just repeats the question, who, as if preparing to reveal its true identity. The little flame tries to reveal reveal its identity, but its words come out as a bunch of indecipherable glitches. So, our protagonist asks what it said, but the spirit doesn't seem to understand its own confusion. The fire creature tries once more to introduce itself, but its speech continues to come out all distorted and impossible to understand. Annoyed, the spirit seems to scream its identity with all its might, but the result is the same: a bunch of bugged-out text. Given the situation, the flame gives up and complains that for some reason, it can't say what it wants. Our protagonist questions why, and the creature explains that it's basically a bug in this world, and therefore has restrictions on what it can say. From there, it suggests that for now, Soda should call it whatever he wants, but the boy feels a bit awkward about the proposal. At this, the fire spirit gets all excited and says that since it's getting a name, it had better be a cool one. Our protagonist thinks for a bit, and since the creature looks like a Hidadama, he suggests the name Tamao. Upon hearing the suggestion, the little flame is so shocked by how bad the name is that it turns to stone. Tamao then recovers from being petrified and gets furious at Soda's terrible taste, but the boy defends himself, saying it was the one who told him to pick anything. The spirit grumbles a bit but ends up accepting the name, since it gave permission itself. Right after, Tamao changes the subject and reminds Soda that he has something important to do now. Our protagonist stops joking around, and his face turns serious as he remembers his mission and his promise. With his eyes shining with determination, he agrees with the little flame, as he knows exactly what he needs to do. Tamao likes Soda's new expression and says that now he's got a good look in his eye. Faced with the situation, our protagonist starts walking towards the exit of the dangerous cave. The fire spirit's voice echoes in the boy's mind, telling him that if he wants to see it again, he just has to go to the catacombs anytime. As the young man approaches the light at the end of the tunnel, the little flame promises it will always be there to help him. Outside, the two goons who abandoned the group are collapsed on the ground, completely exhausted and scared. One of them despairs and yells, asking why a red gate boss was inside a green gate, but the other has no idea. Suddenly, the portal in front of them begins to glow with an abnormal intensity, and the two turn to look. The green light gets brighter and brighter, engulfing them and leaving the bullies terrified, not knowing what to do. Soon after, golden rings of energy start to form around the structure, and one of the boys shouts in surprise about the rings. The other guy's jaw drops, barely able to believe what he's seeing. With the gate now completely surrounded by rings of light, he screams in panic that it's an irregular gate. His friend, not understanding a thing, asks what the heck that is, totally lost in the situation. It turns out that gate difficulty is ranked by color, but if rings appear, the danger level jumps to the absolute highest. Realizing this, the goon panics, because that means they were inside a red gate the whole time. The structure continues to glow ominously, showing that the danger there is far greater than anyone could have imagined. One of the goons panics and says they need to call for help fast, but the other worries about how they'll explain to the association that they trespassed and attacked a civilian. The guy is unsure what to do and doesn't know if he should even report the situation. The other bully, however, says that Takuto was in the wrong and that he got what he deserved for his actions, but his friend doesn't care and asks what they're going to do about Soda. He then suggests they just abandon him there, since no one will look for a guy like him. He continues, saying it was just a useless loser who disappeared, and that they were just taking out the trash. As the irregular gate continues to glow intensely, the two prepare to flee and leave everything behind. At that moment, a voice emerges from the shadows and says, "Sorry for being trash," scaring the two cowards. With that, the boys turn around and are left speechless as they see Soda walking out of the portal completely unharmed. Our protagonist emerges from the light with a cold, determined look, completely surprising his former aggressors. One of them shouts in shock, asking how it's possible he's still alive after everything that happened. Soda completely ignores the question, and his eyes begin to glow with the same fiery energy as before. The bully gets furious at being ignored and repeats the question, wanting to know how the heck he survived. With his special vision, Soda can now see the souls of the two goons and notices something interesting. He notes that compared to the spiders from before, their soul strength is absolutely nothing, and he considers them weak. The goon doesn't like Soda's arrogant attitude at all and accuses him of being responsible for Takuto's demise. He then has the brilliant idea to blame Soda for everything and tells his friend they can just make up a story saying Soda dragged them there and ended up causing Takuto's passing. With that, he declares that he's going to pin all the blame on our protagonist, without a care for the consequences. Soda, however, interrupts him and asks him to save the chat for later, as he needs to have a word with Katora. Katora, the quieter boy, is surprised to hear his name and doesn't understand what Soda wants wants with him. The other bully, however, doesn't like being ignored and gets a look of pure rage on his face. He lunges at our protagonist and yells at him not to underestimate him, ready to throw a punch. Soda isn't even fazed by the threat and maintains his cold, calculating gaze, but before the punch can land, our protagonist easily dodges and delivers a pinpoint counter attack to the aggressor's face. The guy is sent flying from the impact, and blood splatters everywhere as Kotora watches in shock. With that, the bully hits the ground, completely knocked out and out of the fight. Soda then turns and faces Kotora, who is frozen in fear at the scene. The boy can't believe Soda's strength and wonders if he really became a dungeon diver, and to his astonishment, he realizes that besides awakening a skill, Soda is now unbelievably strong. Kotora trembles with fear, even more terrified by the immense strength our protagonist just displayed. Without giving him time to recover, Soda slowly approaches and calls Kotora's name, making it clear that it's his turn now. But instead of continuing the fight, our protagonist says he has a favor to ask Kotora. With a very friendly smile on his face, he asks if the boy would do that for him, as if they were old friends. Completely terrified by the display of power, Kotora stammers and agrees to the request without a second thought. The scene cuts sharply, and now the two are walking through another dark, sinister cave, surrounded by purple spirits. Kotora, in a panic, warns Soda that the situation is terrible, as the two of them can't handle it alone, and if they wait for backup, it will be too late. Our protagonist remembers that the inside of an irregular gate can shift locations at any moment, and Kotora confirms the information. Terrified because of this, Soda clenches his fist tightly and says that if that happens, they'll be completely lost. And for that exact reason, with a will of steel, he declares that he will defeat the Queen Spider before the worst happens. Kotora's jaw drops, and he asks if our protagonist is really planning to fight the dungeon boss alone. He insists they need to call for help immediately, but Soda says there's no time for that until a voice yells, "Stop right there." The pair turns, surprised by the sudden interruption, as they didn't expect to find anyone else in that place. Right after, a new character emerges from the shadows, calling them scoundrels and warning that he won't let them do as they please. Our protagonist is in shock and speechless, recognizing the figure who just arrived to mess up his plans. The newcomer, with a fiery aura around him, yells that they won't get up to any trouble as long as he's alive to stop them. The guy glares at the two with a serious and confident look, ready for the fight to come. Our protagonist, completely confused, asks who the new guy is, but the newcomer, with a ton of attitude, says he doesn't give his name to suspicious people. Soda tries to explain, but the other guy cuts him off and questions what he means by that. The guy points to the unconscious bully in front of the unreported gate and reminds them that exploring a catacomb requires at least 3 people, but there are only 2 of them. With that, he concludes that he has more than enough evidence to take them in as suspects, and the pair becomes visibly nervous. Our protagonist insists and pleads for the guy to just listen to him for a moment, but the newcomer has already lost his patience and yells that he's heard enough as a fiery aura envelopes him. Without a second thought, he charges at our protagonist, ready to throw a punch. The attack comes with full force, but Soda manages to dodge at the last second. Seeing that talking won't get him anywhere, our protagonist realizes he has no other choice. From there, he counter-attacks with a solid punch right to the guy's chin. The newcomer takes the hit head-on, but instead of falling, he just smiles and admits that Soda isn't half bad. Our protagonist is surprised by his opponent's resilience and realizes this person is quite strong. The guy then decides that playtime is over, and a magic circle of energy begins to form around him, and with a determined look he warns that he'll have to get serious from now on, too. But before he could do anything, an explosion of energy occurs, and the newcomer is sent flying, yelling in surprise. Our protagonist is speechless at the scene and doesn't understand what caused the sudden explosion. The newcomer then reveals his ability, which is called Steel Man. He explains that with this skill, he can turn his body into pure steel and warns with a smile that his fists are going to hurt a lot from now on. Soda faces his opponent's power and realizes he's incredibly durable. He understands that if he takes a direct hit, he'll be completely finished and decides the best strategy is a temporary retreat. The boy starts running and the steel guy gets furious, yelling that this is the time for a one-on-one fight and telling him not to run. Kotora, who is just watching, is completely lost in the situation and starts running away too. The steel guy follows him furiously, yelling for him to come out from wherever he's hiding. He continues to demand a fair and honest fight while our protagonist hides behind a rock to think. Soda reflects that he can't beat him one-on-one, but if he uses his flames, he might seriously injure him, leaving him in a dilemma. Suddenly, a green ghost appears beside him and calls him Tuma, saying he still has the same annoying face as always. The spirit continues, saying that seeing Toma again has has truly awakened him, and that today is the day he'll finally finish him. Our protagonist, completely confused, asks if something happened between the ghost and this Tuma, and the spirit screams in surprise. The green ghost is shocked and asks if Soda can really see him, and our protagonist confirms with an awkward smile. The ghost then begins to tell his story, revealing that he and Tuma never got along and decided to settle things in a one-on-one fight. He recalls the day the two of them faced off to see who was the strongest in the area, but unfortunately for him, the result was a loss, and he promised to get revenge next time, but ended up perishing in a catacomb exploration. With that, the spirit yells that he's too frustrated and can't rest in peace with this regret haunting him. Our protagonist listens to the story and, with a thoughtful look, says that if that's the case, maybe he can help. From there, Soda comes out of his hiding spot and positions himself in front of the steel guy, ready for the confrontation. The guy, with an arrogant smile, asks if he's finally ready to face him for real. Our protagonist then calls him by his full name, Masato Igarashi, leaving the steel guy surprised. Masato is shocked and asks how Soda knows his name, but he doesn't have time to get an answer. Soda charges at Masato, who didn't expect such a fast and direct attack. With an apology, our protagonist prepares to use the new ability he just acquired. He touches Masato's chest and unleashes a powerful electric discharge, completely paralyzing him. The steel guy has no idea what's happening as the shock courses through his entire body. Soon after, he can't handle the voltage and falls to the ground, completely knocked out and out of the fight. The green ghost celebrates the victory, yelling that he finally managed to defeat his long-time rival. The green spirit waves goodbye and thanks Soda, because now he has no more pending regrets. Watching the soul depart, our protagonist reflects that everyone must have their own version of regrets. Right after, a system window confirms that Tadashi Goto's remorse has been resolved, and Soda inherits the electric shock ability, which generates a powerful discharge for an instant. Suddenly, a voice calls him, and the boy turns around with a surprised expression on his face. It was Katora who was there, stunned by the scene, and comments on how incredible it was that our protagonist took down his opponent. The young man then questions why Katora didn't run away, and the boy replies that he still doesn't understand why he was dragged there. With a serious look, our protagonist reveals that he needed his former classmate's ability. Soda continues, saying that Katora's skill is to manipulate poison, known as Poison Alchemist. Leaving the other boy astonished, he goes on to explain that if Katora controls toxins, he can also create an antidote if he has the right ingredients. A painful memory comes to Soda's mind of when the bullies forced him to swallow something, and he says he knows that ability well. Faced with the situation, Katora asks what he wants, and our protagonist declares that he will defeat the Queen Spider. With that, he reveals his true plan and asks Katora to create the antidote for his mother. The young man says Katora doesn't have to fight and that if he perishes, the boy should just run, but he's interrupted by his new ally, who states that he will fight too. From there, Katora grabs him and, with a desperate look, begs Soda to help Takedo. The boy admits he has no right to ask this but reveals that he only awakened his ability because of Taketo. In desperation, Katora clutches his head and reveals that Takedo saved him countless times in the past. A memory shows the blonde protecting him during a fight, and because of that, the boy considers him a true savior. Our protagonist, however, turns his back and, with a cold voice, says he's sorry but refuses the request. He firmly declares that he has no intention of forgiving the bully and suggests that while he fights the queen, Katora can go save his friend on his own. Hearing this response, Katora is visibly shocked by the harshness in Soda's words. The young man just walks away and says he won't get in his way. With a slight smile, Katora seems to understand and accept our protagonist's decision. He then thanks the boy while in the background, Masato Igarashi begins to regain consciousness. Suddenly, the two boys turn around with expressions of pure astonishment on their faces. It turns out Masato has gotten up and is crying with emotion over the whole story, asking if is okay now, while telling them not to underestimate his durability. Right after, the steel guy grabs our protagonist by the collar and complains that if it was for his mother and his friend, he should have said so from the beginning, while the boy thinks that he attacked them without listening to a word. Masato then says that since they're all in the same boat, he'll lend a hand with the mission too. Our protagonist is completely stunned by the totally unexpected offer of help. He tries to refuse, saying it's too dangerous, but Masato insists he not be so cold as he's doing it because he wants to. With a serious look, the steel guy reveals that besides that he has another reason for helping. He continues, saying that in any case, it seems they don't have time to run. As the Queen Spider emerges from the shadows right in front of the group, the creature glares at the trio with its glowing red eyes and Masato yells its name, Queen. Faced with the situation, the steel guy wastes no time and yells for everyone to get ready for a fight as his fist is covered in energy. And so, the three of them take their positions before the gigantic monster, ready for the battle that's about to begin. Katora, a little scared, asks Masato how far he's gotten in clearing catacombs. The steel guy replies that he's defeated the boss of a purple gate but admits this is his first time facing a red gate boss. From there, he takes the lead and announces that he will act as the team's shield. However, before he could finish his sentence, our protagonist charges towards the monster alone, leaving Masato completely surprised. The green spider wastes no time and attacks with its sharp claws, ready to slice Sota to pieces. But our protagonist, with incredible agility, manages to dodge all the blows without any difficulty. Seeing that physical attacks weren't working, the creature gathers energy in its hand, preparing a ranged attack. Right after, a beam of purple energy is fired at high speed towards our protagonist. The boy, however, isn't phased and leaps over the attack with impressive precision. Masato's jaw drops, and he asks if Sota has cleared a red gate before, but Katora replies, "No way." He continues, explaining that Sota awakened his ability just a few hours ago. As the boy continues his advance against the green spider, Masato can't believe what he's seeing and comments that the boy's movements seem like those of an experienced veteran. Soon after, our protagonist is engulfed in flames and prepares for a new attack against the creature. The steel guy is even more surprised to realize that the young man can also use fire and that he was holding back until now. Because of this, Masato gets pumped up with energy and declares that he can't lose to him, activating his steel man skill. With a battle cry, he charges at the spider and delivers a powerful punch. His expression shows all the determination of a fighter who won't give up the battle easily. However, the blow lands squarely on one of the monster's legs, but doesn't leave a single scratch. The creature then easily grabs Masato and lifts him into the air, putting the guy in a really bad spot. As the queen prepares to finish him off, a mysterious voice tells Sota to act. Faced with the situation, our protagonist jumps off the cave wall and flies towards the monster's head. He then uses his new ability and unleashes a full-force electric discharge on the creature to stun it. The queen spider is paralyzed by the shock and ends up dropping Masato, who falls to the ground. After recovering, the steel guy warns that the creature's hide is too tough and that normal attacks aren't working, and so, our protagonist suggests that maybe fire will work, leaving Masato a bit confused. The young man then asks the steel guy to distract the spider so he'll have an opening to burn it at point-blank range, and Masato loves the reckless plan. Without hesitation, Masato activates his Overload Steel Man mode, and his entire body transforms into shining metal. In his new form, he charges forward and faces the multiple attacks from the queen spider's sharp claws head on. The creature is visibly surprised, as its blows are having no effect against the boy's defense. Masato puts all his strength into blocking, and thinks that his special mode won't last much longer and that he's counting on Sota. Faced with this resistance, the queen spider becomes completely furious and bares its sharp fangs, ready to bite. The monster then lunges at the steel guy, who shouts, "Gotcha," as he has successfully drawn its attention. With that, our protagonist appears with his fist ablaze, ready to use his Flaming Lotus ability. He takes advantage of the opening and lands a direct hit on one of the creature's legs while it was completely distracted by Masato. The queen spider lets out a high-pitched scream of pain from the fire attack and retreats far away, trying to escape. The creature quickly climbs to the cave ceiling, trying to recover from the damage it just took. Sota complains that its reaction speed is too good, but Masato encourages him, saying the fire is working and tells them to chase it. From there, the three of them start chasing the monster as it flees desperately through the dark cave. Kotora, who is watching from a distance, is impressed and thinks that maybe the two of them can actually win this battle, asking Takedo to wait just a little longer. As he runs, the boy notices something strange on the cave floor and wonders what it is. He stops running and stares at the object on the ground, which appears to be a shoe, lost in the middle of nowhere. He looks closer and realizes that shoe belongs to Takedo. With this discovery, a chill runs down his spine and he becomes completely terrified. Right after, the queen spider appears, devouring something bloody, and lets out a horrifying shriek. Seeing that terrible scene, Kotora loses his mind and charges at the monster, screaming his lungs out. But he doesn't stand a chance and is hit squarely by one of the creature's claws, getting thrown to the ground. Down and defenseless, all he can do is watch as the queen spider prepares the final blow to finish him off. However, a voice shouts, telling it to stop, and something blocks the attack at the last second. It turns out Masato threw himself in front to protect the boy, but his steel defense begins to crack, and he wonders if his power was too weak. Our protagonist screams in despair as he sees the creature pierce the steel guy's chest with its claw. He runs to help, but the monster is faster and manages to grab his leg, side, stopping him from advancing. With that, the queen spider lets out another furious shriek, ready to finish them all right there. It then throws him with all its might to the other side of the cave. As if he were nothing, our protagonist flies through the air, completely out of control, with an expression of pain on his face. He then hits the ground hard, completely defeated, while Masato also lies wounded. Completely drained, our protagonist passes out on the ground as someone desperately shouts his name. Right after, the creature uses its webs to trap our protagonist, who is unconscious on the ground. With that, it lifts him into the air as if he were a cocoon, and brings him closer to its mouth. The queen spider prepares to devour him, but a voice says, "Thanks. Because of that, I was able to get close." Our protagonist opens his eyes with a look of pure determination, completely surprising the monster. From there, an explosion of flames erupts, and he breaks free from the webs that held him with incredible force. Misato's jaw drops, and he yells that the scoundrel was pretending to be unconscious the whole time just to trick the creature. Taking advantage of the proximity, Sota shoves one of the spider's own fangs right into its head. Masato and Katora are shocked by the scene, and the steel guy recognizes the object, wondering if Sota picked it up earlier. With his hand bleeding, our protagonist drives the fang even deeper, and it begins to release a bluish electrical energy. Soon after, he uses his electric shock ability and sends a full discharge into the monster. The creature is electrocuted from the inside out, and Masato wonders in shock if the boy just poured electricity directly into its body. With the monster paralyzed, our protagonist declares that this is the end of it all. From there, he uses his Hellfire skill and unleashes a devastating blast of flames that engulfs the queen spider. The creature lets out one last puff of smoke before being completely consumed by the overwhelming power of the flames. With that, the gigantic monster finally falls lifeless to the cave floor, completely defeated by our protagonist. With the fang in his hand, our protagonist breaks off the tip, knowing he now has the ingredient to save his mother, and relieved, he tells his father that he finally did it, and that with this, he can save his mom. At this scene, Katora and Masato approach Kiddo's fallen body with sad expressions. The steel guy then says they need to take the body and give him a proper burial, and Katora agrees in silence. Soon after, Masato greets our protagonist and congratulates him on his victory in the battle. The young man sincerely thanks him and says he wouldn't have won without his help, but the steel guy tells him not to worry, as he only did what he wanted. He continues, commenting that it's amazing Sota has multiple abilities, and that the electricity reminds him of a very unpleasant guy. Our protagonist then reveals that he learned to use electric shock thanks to a person named Godo-san. He goes on to say that he wanted to visit his grave to thank him, but Masato interrupts him, surprised by the idea. With that, the steel guy reveals that Godo is alive, leaving our protagonist completely shocked by the news. The young man says it can't be, and that he met him yesterday, but Masato insists there's no mistake. Suddenly, Sota's vision starts to get distorted, and he feels a very strong headache. He begins to feel sick, and Masato rushes to help him, asking if he's okay. A mysterious voice then echoes in his mind, saying he has touched the root of the world. As the small flame appears, lying on the ground in great pain, our protagonist asks if the voice is Tamaz. His vision blurs and he finds himself in a classroom with an unknown girl, wondering who she is. Back in the cave, the small flame warns him to remember that the person he must save, and the voice continues, saying it's not just his mother, leaving a great mystery in the air. The scene then shifts to a hospital where Sota points at a new guy and asks if that's really his face. Masato can't believe the resemblance and asks if they're twins, but the guy yells that he's an only child. The steel guy comments that even with a scary face, the other guy has the air of a spoiled brat. Faced with the situation, the so-called Godo explodes in anger and asks why they dragged him there just to insult him. The argument gets even uglier, and the two start yelling at each other in the middle of the hospital hallway. Because of this, our protagonist, with his head bandaged, has to intervene and remind them that they're in a hospital. The fight stops and someone asks if the gate is secure now, and the response is that they checked on their way out. It's explained that once a boss is defeated, the gate stabilizes and eliminates any future risk of invasion. With a satisfied smile, our protagonist hears that they have him to thank for clearing the catacomb. Soon after, the boy says he's going to check on Katora and walks away, leaving the other two behind. With that, Godo asks if that kid really defeated the boss, and Masato confirms that he definitely took down the Red Gate boss. Godo is completely shocked by the news, while the steel guy reflects on Sota's insane ability to inherit skills from wandering souls. Masato continues his reflection, adding that it's not just that, Sota is also fast and has a lot of guts. With a confident smile on his face, the steel guy thinks that our protagonist might be a good addition to their team. Godo then asks if he's serious about recruiting the boy, and Masato confirms the idea on the spot. From there, the steel guy turns to his companion and says he needs to ask him. He asks him a very serious favor, and the other wants to know what it is. Masato suddenly gets close to Godo, putting them face to face. He makes his unusual request, fast. Right after, a scream of, "Get off my back," echoes through the entire hospital corridor, startling everyone nearby. The scene shifts to the hospital's outdoor area, and Katora's hand glows with a mysterious purple energy. Kneeling on the ground, the boy uses his Poison Alchemist ability to analyze the queen spider's fang and create the antidote. At that moment, our protagonist approaches from behind and Katora turns, calling his name. The young man asks how it's going, and Katora replies that the venom analysis will be finished soon, and then asks how Soto is feeling. Soto says he's fine, and our protagonist expresses relief, as he was worried when he suddenly fainted in the cave. The boy continues, saying he heard from Masato what happened and sincerely thanks Katora for carrying him out of the dungeon. Katora replies that his injuries were the lightest of all, so it was no problem to help. Soto apologizes for being a burden, but his new friend tells him not to think about it. Our protagonist understands the feeling, as he knows all too well what it's like when someone important is in danger, and he remembers his parents. Katora says he completely despises Takedo but won't deny the admiration the other felt for him. Our protagonist, with a smile on his face, admits he can't compete with that kind of feeling. Katora is a bit confused by the response and asks what he meant, but the young man says it was nothing. He then changes the subject and announces that the venom analysis has been successfully completed. From there, the poison master uses his ability and transforms the fang into a small vial with a green liquid. Inside the vial is the antidote that can finally cure our protagonist's mother of her coma. Katora then hands the antidote to Soda and urges him to take it to her as quickly as possible. With a smile of pure gratitude, our protagonist takes the vial and thanks his new friend for his help. He then starts running with all his might towards his mother's room, screaming in his mind that he can finally save her. Arriving at the room, he finds his mother lying on the hospital bed, still in a deep coma. The young man approaches with a racing heart and the antidote in his hands, ready to finally end all that suffering. Without a second thought, he pours the green liquid into his mother's mouth, hoping that everything will work out. She then swallows the antidote, and a bright green light begins to envelop her completely. The woman's entire body begins to glow intensely, indicating that the antidote is taking effect. Our protagonist watches the scene with wide eyes as his mother's eyes begin to slowly open. With tears in his eyes, our protagonist calls out for his mother, and she responds, calling his name back. She then places a hand on his face and, with tears streaming down, says that he's grown so much. The woman continues, saying she's so happy about it, and our protagonist cries with emotion at the union. Outside the room, the young man begins to recount everything that happened and mentions his father. The woman cries upon discovering the feelings her late husband held for her. Soda then explains that his father's wish was to save her, and that's why he entrusted him with this mission. With his hands in flames, he says he inherited his feelings, his power, and everything else. The woman recognizes the power and, with a surprised expression, says that those are Kiichiro's flames. She then asks her son what he's going to do from now on and what's next for him. Our protagonist gets a bit pensive at the question, but soon his expression changes. With a will of steel in his eyes, he declares that he will become the strongest dungeon diver who won't let anyone perish. He sits facing his mother in the hospital room, ready to hear her response. The young man then asks if she is against his decision to follow this dangerous path. The woman takes a deep breath and, with a firm voice, answers that yes, she is against it. She explains that just imagining her son in danger makes her heart feel like it's going to break in two. She continues, saying that his father and she made him go through those same feelings, and it wouldn't be fair for her to be the only one to stop him. With a gentle smile on her face, the woman gives her blessing for her son's journey. Our protagonist is moved by her response and, with a shy smile, can only manage to say the word mum. The woman then asks him to promise one thing in his nobody perishes rule. He needs to include himself. With tear-filled eyes, she says that if he were to be lost, she wouldn't be able to bear the pain. The young man, with a smile full of determination on his face, promises that he will keep his word. He then hugs his mother tightly and declares with all the conviction in the world that he will never perish. After the emotional conversation, our protagonist leaves the room with a lighter and more peaceful heart, but as soon as he steps out, he comes face to face with Katora and Masato, who were eavesdropping on the conversation. The two seem embarrassed for having heard everything, and the steel guy tries to apologize for listening in. Our protagonist, however, says it's okay and doesn't mind the situation. Katora then changes the subject and reminds them that the real problem is what's going to happen now, since they entered the catacomb without authorization. Masato, however, reassures him and, with a confident smile, says it's all good because his team will take care of that part. The young man is surprised by the news, and the steel guy confirms that it's already been handled. With that, Masato approaches and makes an unexpected invitation for our protagonist to join his team. Our protagonist is surprised by the invitation, and Masato reinforces, "You want to become the strongest dungeon diver, right?" He continues, saying that the young man will find the strength he's looking for with them, and they will help him become the strongest he so desperately seeks. The scene then shifts to a catacomb catacomb with a bright, golden gate in the middle of the forest. Inside, a guy apologizes for Masato jumping the gun and making the invitation on his own, while another, sitting on a pile of monsters, says it's fine. He continues saying that Masato rarely does this kind of thing, and that he kind of wants to meet this guy too. With an excited smile on his face, he reveals that he wants to meet the young man named Sota Sezuki. An explanatory text then reveals that a team is an organization that sends a formation notice to the Dungeon Divers Association. After receiving official approval, they can conduct catacomb explorations and boss subjugations, basically being an organization required to conquer dungeons. Back in the present, Masato reveals that he is a member of the team known as the strongest of all Tenru. Kotor is shocked by the information and says that Tenru isn't just an elite team in Japan, but one of the best in the entire world. He continues explaining that if he remembers correctly, there are numbered squads from 1 to 10, and each one has an incredibly skilled captain. Masato confirms the information and compliments Kotora for being so well informed on the subject. Kotora reveals that Takuto greatly admired Tenru, and that he said he would join them one day. Masato listens to the story with a serious expression, and Kotora smiles at the memory of his old friend. Our protagonist then says he knows a little about the team and that the commander-in-chief's name is Yamato Sumeraji. He continues, saying he heard the man resolved historic incidents all over the world, and that Japan's Dungeon Divers Association publicly named him the strongest. With his eyes shining with admiration, our protagonist thinks that being able to meet someone as incredible as him is a great opportunity. Masato asks if he's nervous, but the boy replies that he's not and thanks him for the opportunity. The steel guy praises the young man's attitude and says he has impressive courage. Soon after, they arrive in front of a building, and Masato announces that this is the entrance to the Tenru headquarters. However, our protagonist is confused because the so-called headquarters just looks like an old, ordinary house. Masato then tells him to just watch and opens the door, revealing a secret passage. On the other side of the door, they enter a super modern and futuristic hallway, leaving our protagonist speechless. The place is all high-tech, with bright lights and architecture that doesn't match the house's facade at all. Our protagonist wonders if this is also some kind of special ability to hide the real headquarters. Masato, with a proud smile, asks if it's amazing and starts bragging about their base. But before he could finish his sentence, he gets punched in the head by a new guy who just arrived. The man says he heard everything and accuses Masato of acting on his own and exploring a catacomb without permission. Masato tries to defend himself, saying he got permission from Yamato, but the other guy calls him bro and continues the scolding. The older brother says he knows but squeezes Masato's head even tighter, and Masato doesn't understand why. The guy then reveals that Masato pushed all the mission's paperwork onto Goto's second squad. He continues the scolding, saying that if he's going to do something, he needs to take responsibility until the end, while Masato grumbles that the scoundrel ratted him out. The argument continues, and our protagonist tries to intervene once more to calm things down. The older brother then turns and introduces himself as Yusei Igarashi, the vice commander of Tenru. He bows an apology for his younger brother's behavior. Our protagonist tries to say it was nothing, but Yusei insists that his brother has always been the type to charge ahead without listening to anyone. Masato, however, complains that his brother is being too strict with him. As always, suddenly, a voice emerges and tells him to take it easy, as it was to help people, and with a smile, the one and only Yamato appears. Our protagonist is shocked to realize that this person is the legendary Yamato Sumeraji. He seems totally normal and even a bit thin, which surprises the young man even more. However, the man's eye glows with a mysterious and intimidating fiery energy. Our protagonist uses his special vision and realizes that Yusei is stronger than Masato, but Yamato seems like a normal person, or even weaker. With a gentle smile on his face, Yamato approaches our protagonist with a friendly look. He then hugs him and says he really wanted to meet him, leaving the young man completely flustered. He compliments the young man's ability, and the boy thinks he's more laid back than he imagined. Yamato then asks if he wants to become the strongest, and our protagonist is surprised by the direct question. With a confident smile, he asks if Sota wants to see what being the strongest is really like. Our protagonist is silent for a moment, just staring at the strongest man in the world. Without a second thought, he bows and, with great excitement, asks to see his power. The other team members are shocked by the response and try to intervene. Yusei tries to stop Yamato, but he says it's fine and that he'll go easy on the boy. He continues, saying the young man is already completely pumped for the fight and that there's no turning back now. Faced with the situation, Yusei agrees, but warns that he will stop the fight if it gets dangerous, and Sota thanks him for his concern. Yamato turns and, with a firm step, starts walking down the base's hallway. He then announces that they're going to the training room, and our protagonist follows him closely. Suddenly, the environment around them begins to transform, with walls and and lights changing shape. The hallway walls dissolve and give way to a spacious and futuristic area full of technology. Our protagonist is confused by the sudden change and doesn't understand what just happened. Yamato then turns with an excited smile and warns, "I'm gonna punch with my left. You'd better defend yourself." Our protagonist agrees, and his eyes glow with the energy of flames as he prepares for combat. He thinks he should never let his guard down, as Yamato might use some kind of skill, but when he uses his special vision, he sees no change in him. Suddenly, Yamato's entire body glows with an overwhelming golden energy. Our protagonist is completely shocked by the absurd amount of power he's feeling. Yamato then lunges forward with incredible speed and delivers the promised punch with his left hand. The young man is frozen in fear, as he has never seen anything so fast and powerful in his entire life. With that, the punch hits him squarely, and an explosion of energy sends him flying. The impact is so strong that he is thrown against the training room wall with immense force. The shockwave spreads throughout the entire room, showing the immense strength contained in that single blow. The other team members shout Soda's name, worried about the boy's condition. Lying on the floor, our protagonist asks if his arms are still in one piece, and thinks it felt like a bomb had gone off next to him. With his special vision, he realizes what happened and sees that Yamato is a soul itself, molded into a human form. He continues his analysis and understands that it wasn't a skill, but the pure power of the strongest man's soul. Yamato realizes the boy managed to see his true nature and is surprised by his ability. With an excited smile, he asks if Soda wants to continue the fight and reveals that he is a pure, massive energy. Our protagonist is not intimidated and, with his body in flames, accepts the challenge, asking to please continue. He then advances with a firm step and prepares for the next round of the fight against the strongest man. Yamato attacks with a series of rapid punches, but our protagonist manages to dodge them all with agility. The commander is surprised by the young man's ability to keep up with his movements and prepares for the next blow. The exchange of punches continues at an absurd speed, and Soda manages to block and dodge the attacks with mastery. He thinks that even defending against one more of those blows will take him out of the fight, and that he can't track him with his eyes alone. With that, our protagonist concentrates as much as possible and tries to feel the movement with every cell in his body. Before him stands the strongest man, ready for the next attack with a serious and focused look. The young man then yells for him to show him more of his power and prepares for what's to come. Yamato smiles and says that now he's getting excited, and his eyes glow with an intense red energy. He then delivers a full, force punch right to our protagonist's face with an excited smile. The blow lands squarely, and the young man is thrown back by the impact, feeling the force of the attack. The fight continues with an intense exchange of blows, and Yusei watches from a distance with a worried expression. He comments that the idiot is completely obsessed with the fight, but even so, he didn't expect, and Yusei completes his thought, saying he didn't imagine Soda would be able to last so long against Yamato. Seeing the scene, Misato is flabbergasted and asks what's going on there. Yusei replies that he has no idea, but that actually, he was thinking everything turned out quite well. Ignoring the others' conversation, Soda plants his feet on the ground, ready to continue the battle. With that, his fist is enveloped in an intense fairy aura as he prepares for a new attack. The young man faces the commander and asks if he can use his abilities with everything he's got. Yamato then turns and calls him by a strange nickname, leaving our protagonist completely confused. The strongest man explains that asking for permission is no fun, as he promised to show him what it means to be the most powerful. With a challenging smile and glowing eyes, he tells Soda to come at him with everything he's got, without holding back. Faced with the challenge, our protagonist's determination ignites, and he lets out a battle cry, preparing for the attack. And so, he concentrates a massive amount of fiery energy into his fist, which glows with impressive power. The boy then unleashes all that energy at once and launches a gigantic wave of fire towards the commander-in-chief. Yamato faces the approaching blast of flames with a calm expression, seemingly curious about the attack's power. The commander-in-chief immediately recognizes the ability as that of the strongest flame mage, Kiichiro Sezuki. Upon realizing whose power it is, a huge, excited smile appears on Yamato's face, showing that he's enjoying the fight. From there, he raises his hand and prepares to show the boy the difference in power between them, ready to counter the fairy attack. Yamato faces the wave of fire and, with a smile on his face, stops the attack with just one hand as if it were nothing. Soda is completely shocked by the scene and asks the commander-in-chief what he thought of his blow. Even surrounded by flames, Yamato praises the young man's courage for attacking with everything he had. He continues, saying he's liking our protagonist more and more as the fire dances around him. The boy gives a nervous laugh, not quite sure how to react to the unexpected praise from the strongest man. From there, Yamato prepares to fight seriously and warns that with that power, he can finally level up the battle. Suddenly, a very loud alarm sound echoes through the entire training room, interrupting their fight. Right after, an emergency message appears, informing them that an enemy invasion is happening in Sakurazawa City. Soda is completely shocked by the news and can barely believe an actual invasion is happening. Yamato, however, is quite annoyed, as things were just getting fun when they were interrupted. A scene shows that if a dungeon boss is left alive for too long, the enemies start to leak into the real world and attack cities. Faced with the situation, the commander explains that gates near cities are never ignored and that some group probably failed to clear the dungeon. With the urgency of the situation, Yamato turns to his team and yells for Yusei, asking which teams are ready to deploy. Yusei looks at a data tablet in his hand and informs him that teams 1, 2, and 5 are on standby. And so, the strongest man starts giving orders, telling Team 5 to guide civilians to safety while Teams 1 and 2 are to position themselves 5 kilometers from the city to prevent the enemies from spreading. He continues, telling Yusei and Tuma to take their teams to the gate, and the two immediately confirm the order. Our protagonist then asks what Yamato is going to do, and he reveals he's going to charge straight into the city and take down all the scattered enemies. With a determined expression, the young man asks if he can go with him on the mission. The strongest man agrees but warns that this is a real battle, and if the boy can't keep up, he'll be left behind, and Soda accepts the challenge. Masato then invites Kotora to come along and asks him to look after our protagonist during the combat. The boy is a bit surprised by the request but agrees on the spot without a second thought. With the team ready, Yamato gives the battle cry, telling everyone to move out and warning them not to let anyone perish. With that, the base door opens, and the entire group runs out at high speed towards the city. On the streets, Yamato runs at an absurd pace, with our protagonist struggling to keep up. Kotora, however, is left behind and can barely believe their speed as he tries not to lose sight of the group. The Poison Master is shocked by their surreal speed but notices that Soda is also reaching his limit. Our protagonist starts to get completely exhausted, as fighting for real right after the intense confrontation from before was too much for his body. Suddenly, one of the monsters that invaded the city explodes into 1,000 pieces right in front of the group. It turns out Yamato simply destroyed the creature with a single punch, without even needing to slow down. After eliminating the enemy, the commander-in-chief glances to the side to check on how our protagonist is doing on the mission. The commander-in-chief notices the boy is at his limit as Soda runs with difficulty through the destroyed city, completely out of breath. Yamato thinks that maybe he expected too much from the kid and continues to advance alone, leaving our protagonist behind. With that, the young man can't keep up anymore and collapses hard on the ground, with no strength to continue. Kotora, who is right behind, runs to help him and yells worriedly, asking if he's okay. Lying on the asphalt, our protagonist can barely breathe and feels his whole body ache with exhaustion. He looks ahead and sees Yamato as a distant light, feeling like everything is very far away. Faced with the situation, Kotora thinks this is impossible, and that they should leave the rest to the commander and the Tenru team. And so, he approaches our protagonist and calls his name, trying to get him to give up. The Poison Master questions why he's pushing himself so hard, and says he's already strong enough to just let the commander handle everything. Our protagonist then reflects that until now, he never made his own decisions and always ran away, blaming his lack of strength. But he declares that this time, he himself decided to become the strongest, and if he gives up now, he'll have nothing left, because he doesn't want to lie to himself. With that, he watches Yamato fighting in the distance, and screams in his mind that he wants to catch up to him, no matter what. Kotora seems to understand the boy's determination and, with a thoughtful look, takes a small vial from his pocket. Right after, he uses his Poison Alchemist ability, and a bright green energy envelopes the vial. The energy then flows into our protagonist's body, who feels a new power coursing through his veins, leaving him surprised by what's happening. From there, the Poison Master throws a small vial with a red liquid towards our protagonist. Soda catches the object in mid-air, completely surprised by his new friend's sudden action. Kotora explains that if he drinks it, his hidden power will be unleashed for a short period, and his body will become much stronger. However, he warns that there are side effects, and with a serious look, our protagonist stares at the vial, wondering if he should really drink it. Meanwhile, Yamato continues running through the destroyed city, eliminating all the monsters that appear in his path. He finishes finishes off another creature with a clean hit and wonders about the situation in the rest of the city. Near the gate, Yusei reports over the phone that he checked the inside of the dungeon, but the boss isn't there, and that it has definitely already escaped into the city. Yamato receives the news while landing a punch on another monster, and tells his companion to stop any more enemies from coming out of the portal. With a serious look, the commander-in-chief hangs up the phone and focuses completely on the mission ahead. Before him, a gigantic ogre emerges from the shadows and glares at him with a threatening look, revealing itself to be the dungeon boss. Yamato isn't fazed by the monster's presence and, with a glint in his eye, declares that he'll finish it right there. His blue eyes shine with an intense energy as he prepares for the battle against the boss. But before he could do anything, our protagonist appears out of nowhere and lands a full, force-fire punch right in the ogre's face. Kotora watches from a distance as a gigantic explosion erupts from the impact of Soda's blow. Sitting on the ground, the poison master tosses the now empty vial into the air and grumbles about his friend's recklessness. The scene flashes back a bit, showing our protagonist saying, "Thanks," but chugging the potion without a second thought. With that, the young man's eyes begin to glow with a new and powerful energy as the potion takes effect. Soon after, he shoots off at an absurd speed, completely startling Kotora, who was nearby. The now empty vial falls to the asphalt as Kotora watches the scene, cheering him on. With a smile on his face, the poison master encourages him to keep going at the monster with everything he's got. Back in the present, the giant ogre is on the ground, completely defeated by our protagonist's powerful blow. Yamato approaches with a smile on his face and compliments the boy, saying that wasn't half bad. But suddenly, another winged monster emerges from the flames, ready for a fight. Soda's body is enveloped in an even more intense fairy aura, showing that he won't give up easily. He declares that no matter how far ahead Yamato is, he won't give up and will keep following right behind him. The new creature doesn't like the boy's attitude at all and lets out a roar of pure fury. Yamato gets annoyed by the interruption and charges at the new enemy. His look shows that playtime is over and that he's going to end this fight once and for all. Our protagonist continues with his power aura active, ready to help in the coming battle. With his eyes glowing with power, he faces the new challenge without a shred of fear. Yamato explains that the ogre is the boss of the gate that started the invasion, and even if they defeat it, the other monsters won't just disappear. Faced with the situation, he points to the ogre and says it's a red gate boss, asking if our protagonist can handle it alone. With all the conviction in the world, the young man shouts, "Wes," and accepts the challenge without a second thought. With that, Yamato smiles and tells the boy to hold the monster off for a bit, promising he'll finish his part of the mission very quickly. Having said that, the strongest man runs off, and our protagonist is left completely confused, not understanding where he went. It turns out the commander-in-chief simply leaped over a building and flew across the city at an absurd speed. In a matter of seconds, he's already far away, showing the huge power difference between them. Soda then collects himself and tells himself it's no time to get distracted, as Yamato trusted him, and so he will definitely defeat the ogre. The giant monster wastes no time and raises its huge club, preparing to smash our protagonist. The creature attacks with everything it's got, but the young man manages to dodge the blow with his potion. Enhanced agility, he remembers the punch he threw earlier and realizes the creature's defense is ridiculously high and that it won't be easy to take down. And so he comes up with a strategy and decides to hit the monster with fire up close, and when it falters, he'll finish it with his Hellfire ability. Without wasting time, he charges forward yelling, "Take this," and launches a blast of flames at the creature. The boy lands a series of flaming punches right on the ogre's stomach, trying to break its guard. The monster withstands the blows and, with an unfriendly look, grinds its teeth, showing it's not happy about the situation. The ogre isn't fazed and retaliates with a powerful punch right through our protagonist's guard, leaving him completely surprised by the counter attack. With that, the young man is thrown backward with absurd force and crashes hard against a building wall, which cracks from the impact. All bruised up and with blood trickling from his mouth, he can barely believe that even after all those blows, the monster doesn't have a single scratch. It turns out, to his complete despair, the creature is completely resistant to fire, and his strategy went up in smoke. He remembers that his other lightning ability is only good for stunning the creature and won't be enough to defeat it for good. Faced with this, the boy panics, and with no other options, he wonders what he should do to get out of this mess. In this moment of desperation, a spark of an idea seems to flash in his mind as he faces the monster. The creature doesn't understand the sudden change in the young man's expression and looks at him with pure suspicion, and so, he gets up and a new fiery aura envelops him as he prepares to try a new approach in the battle. Suddenly, Tamo's voice echoes in his mind, warning him him not to rely too much on his father's abilities. The fire spirit continues explaining that yes, fire is powerful, but some enemies simply aren't affected by it. Our protagonist claims he already knows that, but the little flame doubts his word with a tone of pure irony. The fire creature then scolds him, saying that because he was weak for so long, he's now overconfident and fighting too recklessly. Because of this, and to ensure victory, the spirit warns that it will teach him its ultimate move to use in an emergency. Our protagonist gets super excited by the idea, and the little flame continues, saying it's a super powerful technique, and that maybe he can already use it now. Our protagonist listens attentively, and the little flame continues, telling him to listen carefully to what it's about to say. It explains that not even the strongest challengers in the world can always use this technique, and that only someone who truly understands the soul can perform it. The young man is curious about the explanation and asks what kind of move is so difficult to execute. With a wicked smile, Tama reveals that it doesn't matter if it's a punch or a kick. The important thing is to concentrate every drop of his aura into a single attack. Our protagonist is confused and says he already fights with everything he's got, but the spirit explains it's not about holding back or not. It continues, saying that the aura normally flows from the soul throughout the body, and that gathering it into a single point is extremely difficult, and that not even the most experienced challengers can gather much, but it reveals that if the boy understands his soul and perfectly controls the flow, he can attack with much more power than normal, and the young man gets excited by the idea. The fire spirit warns that it requires insane concentration to gather all the aura, and that in a life or death fight, it's hard to focus that much, and that's why it said it was to be used only in case of emergency, in the middle of battle. Timaya then reveals the true name of the technique and warns that if the enemy is too strong, Soda should just run away. Back in the present, our protagonist is enveloped in an even more powerful fiery aura and prepares to use the new ability. He concentrates and feels that everything is so quiet he can't even feel the pain anymore. The young man remembers the fight against Yamato and realizes that confrontation greatly sharpened his focus and concentration. The ogre doesn't understand what's happening and charges at the boy, ready to end the fight. Our protagonist, however, is completely focused and feels that now he can finally use the secret technique. He then uses his anomalous vision and can see the ogre's aura concentrating in its right arm. With that, he understands what he needs to do and lunges towards the monster, which was still preparing to attack. The young man then throws himself on top of the creature and envelopes it in a powerful fiery aura, completely immobilizing it. The ogre tries to retaliate with a punch, but our protagonist is faster and grabs it by the head. With his hand on top of the creature's head, he manages to hold it in place for a brief moment. From there, he uses his electric shock ability and unleashes a full discharge right on the monster's head. The creature is electrocuted and completely paralyzed by the absurd voltage coursing through its body. The ogre lets out a scream of pain but can't move, as the electricity has left it totally defenseless. Our protagonist seizes the opening and, with a look of pure determination, prepares for the final blow. With all his concentration, he focuses his energy into his fist, ready to use the technique he just learned. His hand begins to glow with an absurd intensity, accumulating a massive amount of power, and with all his might, he reveals the name of the secret technique Tamao taught him. With a battle cry, he unleashes the Soul Burst and lands a full force punch right in the middle of the ogre's face. The impact is so strong that the creature is sent flying backward with immense force, and its legs are completely destroyed. Soon after, the monster crashes hard against a building wall, and the structure collapses on top of it, leaving it out of commission. The ogre lets out one last scream of pain, as it is completely consumed by the flames of the soul burst. With his fist still glowing, our protagonist looks at the result and, with a sigh of relief, says he finally did it. He continues panting, but with a smile on his face, because now he feels he can get a little closer to Yamato. Soon after, his expression changes completely, and he realizes something strange is happening to his body. From there, his hands begin to shake uncontrollably, and he feels a sudden weakness take over everything. He can barely stay on his feet, and with blurry vision, the young man gasps that his strength has just vanished. At that moment, he remembers Katora's warning and realizes that this is the side effect of the potion he drank. Completely drained of strength, he falls to his knees, and to his bad luck, a new group of monsters emerges from the shadows and surrounds him. The creatures look like smaller ogres, but they are still very threatening and glare at the boy with a look of pure malice. Completely surrounded and unable to move, our protagonist finds himself in a desperate situation with no escape route. Lying on the ground, he grinds his teeth in pure anger and frustration, wondering why this had to happen right now. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Yamato stops in front of a gigantic skyscraper and looks at it with admiration. He is impressed by the building's height and comments on how tall it is. With a smile on his face, the commander-in-chief says that place is a great reference point for what he plans to do. With that said, he stumps hard on the rooftop floor and prepares to unleash an absurd absurd amount of power. He then leaps from the building and starts running through the air as if defying gravity. From up there, he admires the city view and says it's simply magnificent. With that, he lands on another building and runs towards the edge, ready for the next leap. He takes out an old flip phone and asks if everyone is ready, and on the other end of the line, Yusei confirms that they are. The vice commander informs him that Squad 2 has already sealed off all enemies within a 5-kilometer radius of the tower, and that Squad 1 has also reported the same. Yamato thanks him for the information and with a serious look, prepares to initiate his plan. With a confident smile on his face, the strongest man says it's time to begin. Soon after, an aura of bright blue energy envelops his entire body, preparing him for a large-scale attack. The energy concentrates at his feet, and he begins to float in the air, accumulating an absurd amount of power. From there, he unleashes all that energy at once, and a blue shockwave spreads throughout the entire city. The energy spreads at an impressive speed, enveloping all the buildings and streets within a 5-kilometer radius. Meanwhile, back to our protagonist, he remains on the ground, surrounded by monsters, unable to do anything. He lets out a groan of pain and frustration, knowing he has no strength left to fight. With tears in his eyes, the young man refuses to give up and screams in his mind that he can't perish in a place like this. But the monsters don't care about his determination and charge at him, ready to end his life. But before they can reach him, a blue light begins to shine around all of them. Our protagonist is completely shocked and wonders what that is, as he's never seen anything like it before. The creatures are also confused and paralyzed by the mysterious light that completely envelops them. The young man then realizes what's happening and can barely believe what he's about to witness. It turns out the blue energy Yamato unleashed has spread throughout the city and is now about to explode. From the top of the building, the commander-in-chief comments that 5 kilometers took a little time and prepares for the final blow. With a confident smile, he clenches his fist and shouts the word "size," activating his ability. Right after, the blue energy transforms into a punishment of lightning that strikes all the monsters in the city. The electrical discharge is so powerful that the enemies are completely electrocuted and can't even react. One of the creatures lets out one last scream of pain before being completely consumed by the electricity. In a matter of seconds, all the monsters in the 5-kilometer area are completely eliminated by the commander-in-chief's overwhelming power. The citizens who were in danger watch the scene, shocked and not understanding what just happened. After the dust settles, our protagonist stands alone amidst the destruction, surrounded by the bodies of the monsters. He is completely surprised by what he just witnessed and can barely believe his own eyes. The young man then turns and realizes that even though he was in the middle of it all, he came out completely unscathed from the attack. His eyes widen as he realizes this means the commander-in-chief has absurd control over his ability. The young man understands that the enormous aura wasn't just released throughout the city, but that it also solely focused on the monsters as targets. The civilians who were in danger celebrate with relief as children run to hug their families. Our protagonist is shocked to realize the ability didn't hit any of the civilians, nor him, even though he was in the middle of everything. The giant ogre he faced was also completely consumed by the blue energy and dissolves into particles of light. With that, the energy dissipates and the monsters' bodies disappear as if they never existed. The boy gives a nervous laugh because the power difference between him and Yamato is simply absurd. At that moment, the strongest man approaches with a smile on his face and greets him, saying he did a good job. Our protagonist looks at the commander and thinks that the title of strongest is still very far from his reach. Right after, the potion side effect finally hits him hard, and he faints into Yamato's arms, who catches him before he falls. The commander-in-chief is surprised by the situation and looks at him with curiosity. He then realizes that the heavy ogre's presence had vanished even before his punishment began. Yamato remembers when he left the boy to fight alone, and can barely believe that he actually defeated the boss on his own. With our protagonist unconscious in his arms, the commander observes him with a thoughtful look. With a smile on his face, he says the young man is truly an interesting guy and calls him by his affectionate nickname once more. A voice calls the commander-in-chief's name, and he turns, with our protagonist still in his arms. A new character approaches and says that Yamato loves being flashy as always, and a small caption reveals he is the captain of Tenro's first squad, Kakuru Amami. The captain continues the teasing and says that by sending his aura all over the city, he's definitely going to get a complaint from the association. Yamato, however, doesn't care and with a smile replies that calming down the association is Kakuru's role, and that he's in charge of the president's lecture. With the boy still in his arms, the commander-in-chief says he had no choice, because to recruit a promising new member, a flashy performance was necessary. Kakeru was surprised and asks if he's talking about soda, and Yamato confirms it on the spot. With that, he declares that he is entrusting the boy to the first squad and asks the captain to take good care of him. Kakeru accepts the responsibility and, with his eyes closed, says he was already planning to ask for him anyway. The scene then shifts to the hospital room, where our protagonist's mother is sitting on the bed, reading a book. She looks up with a serene expression. An old photo shows the happy family with a young Soda and his father standing next to another boy. And that man is none other than Kakeru, who declares with a serious expression that raising the boy is a duty he must fulfill.